On a dark, windy night, in a quiet, secluded lane, walks a man on his way back home, unaware of the fact that he's being followed by someone, or maybe something,
Aryaman?
What are you doing?
trying to create an eerie mood.
And why would you do that?
Oh, yes, that's the genre we wish to touch with this show.
Exactly. A horror show.
Okay, then it's time to begin the show where we deliver a few of the best horror stories written by our writers, brought to you by Radio Amity 107.8 FM. I am Shreya,
Mrigank here.
And my name is Aryaman.
and this is The Horror Show.
Alright, so Aryaman and Shreya, before we begin, I wanted to ask if you guys really believe in the presence of paranormal beings or ghosts as such?
I personally, for a fact, do not believe in or support anything that is paranormal or superstitious.
Yes, and we urge people to take these stories as mere fiction and just a tool of entertainment, to elements of surprise and horror.
Great, so with a disclaimer that we do not support any sort of superstitious or paranormal beliefs, and without further ado, let us begin. The title of our first story is Obsessive Compulsive by Aryaman Gupta.
Hello. I suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder, which is an anxiety disorder in which people have unwanted and repeated thoughts, feelings, ideas, behavior. In other words, my life is a systematic pattern. But yesterday, I experienced a flaw in my own system. I woke that morning in my lakeside home, promptly at 6:45 a.m., as I usually do every morning. Before leaving my bedroom, I made sure to touch the doorknob 3 times. I have to. I need to. On my way downstairs, I made sure not to step on the second to last step. I never touch that step, just can't. I made my usual breakfast of toast, scrambled eggs, and black coffee. I never get anything else in the morning, just those three. Turning my iPad on, I made sure to check the local news headlines like usual. But today something was missing. I couldn't place my finger on it. Did I forget something? This strange feeling lingered with me all the way to my car. On my way out the front door, I made sure to lock the door, unlock it, then lock it again. Driving to work, I couldn't help but feel like a part of me was missing. What did I miss? How could I have possibly missed it? I hoped for the feeling to surpass while I was at work that day. It didn't. It stayed with me for the whole 12 hours. I left the office at 6:45 p.m. Headed back home about 25 minutes into my commute. I stopped for the red traffic light at the intersection of Marbury and Westway. But as the light turned from red to green, I couldn't help but feel the strange sensation again. The only other person near me was the man driving behind me. He blared his horn for me to get going, but instead of accelerating, I unrolled my window and motioned for him to go around. He did. I just dreadfully sat there in my car, stopped at the intersection. Something is seriously wrong. What am I missing here? I made sure to touch everything in my car, hoping it would spark a memory. I touched the dashboard, the leather seat, the emergency brake, and even the roof. It did nothing for me. My hands began to tremble as I slowly drove away. This isn't right. I don't like this. Arriving home, I pulled my 74 Mustang into my garage. I wash my car every weekday, never on weekends. I wash only the front of the car and the back, never the sides. No matter how dirty they get, I never wash the sides. I simply can't. But something else seemed missing from my daily routine as I washed. No, not again. First the news, then the intersection, now this? Finishing up with the car, I jogged to the backyard. Only jog, never walk, never run. Opening the tool shed, I felt yet another thing missing from my pattern. This isn't right. I stumbled out of the shed and gazed out at the lake. It always seemed to calm me when my anxiety got out of control, but tonight all I wanted to do was sleep. I needed to finish this day. The next morning I woke up at 6:45 a.m., touched the doorknob 3 times, and made sure not to step on the second to last step on my way down to the kitchen. I prepared my toast, scrambled eggs, and coffee. I turned on the iPad, browsed the local news. It was still missing. I became aggravated. What is it I could possibly be missing? I began to feel nauseous. Hurrying out the door in a vicious rage, I quickly locked the door, unlocked it, then locked it again. I drove off to work. I tend to get a lot of work done when I'm upset for some reason. So at least I felt some accomplishment when I left the office at 6:45 p.m. I drove fast on my way home. Very fast. What am I missing? I approached the red light at Marbury and Westway. Come on, think. Think. A man was walking in the middle of the intersection on his way to the other side. Why can't I remember? The man's head spun as he noticed my Mustang coming straight for him at 85 miles per hour. I noticed him too. A wave of horror crossed over my face as I watched him dive towards one side. I swerved into the same direction, crushing the man under my vehicle with a loud clunk. Jumping out of my car, I hesitated on what to do. He just lay there, writhing in agony, making horrendous curling wails. I popped open the trunk of my Mustang, lifted the screaming man, and heaved him in. I drove. Upon entering my garage, I made sure to wash the blood off the front and the rear of the car. The sides were not necessary. After dragging his broken body out to the backyard, I jogged to the shed. Inside were black garbage bags, cinder blocks, and a hacksaw. After dismembering the man, I was able to fit both the remains and the cinder blocks into the bag. Dropping him in the lake was all that was left to do. The following morning, I made sure to wake up at 6:45 a.m., touched the doorknob 3 times before skipping the second to last step on my way down to the kitchen. While eating my toast, scrambled eggs, and black coffee, I browsed the local news on my iPad. The top headline: Hit and run serial killer strikes again. I smiled. Back to normal.
Wow, that literally gave me chills, guys. Reading a story of an obsessive compulsive serial killer. Are you serious?
Yeah, even the thought of it is scary. I think we should take a break and let the story sink in before we start again. We'll be right back, guys. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to The Horror Show, only on Radio Amity 107.8 FM. And it's time for Shreya to tell us another story, isn't it, Shreya?
Okay, so the title of the story is Him by Aryaman. I've been lying down for hours now. It's 5:35 a.m. and there's nothing much I can do. You know what the worst part about my situation is? I'm in the same room as my parents. They keep looking at me and I can't help but look back and try not to scream. Their eyes are focused on me and their mouths wide open. I feel paralyzed with fear. Here's the thing, the second I make any hint that I am not asleep anymore, I will die. And there is no one around to save me. I've been trying to think of a way out, but the only idea that I have is to rush to the door and run outside while screaming for help, hoping any neighbor would hear me. It's risky, but if I stay here, I'll surely die. He is waiting for me to wake up and see his masterpiece. You're probably wondering what's going on. I do get ahead of myself sometimes. About 3 hours ago, I heard screams from the other side of the house. I got up and went to check on the noise before realizing that I had to use the restroom. Instead of doing the smart thing and investigating, I used the restroom first. I could have gotten myself killed right then for my stupid actions. When I looked out of the restroom, there was blood on the carpet. I panicked and ran back to my room, hiding under the sheets like a coward I was. I tried to convince myself to go back to sleep, that this was a very vivid dream or something. I heard my restroom door open. Like the terrified child I was, I peeked from under the covers to see what was going on. I could see something dragging my dead parents into the room. It was not human, I can tell you that. It was hairless, no eyes, and no clothing. It walked like a caveman, like its back slouched over as it dragged my parents. But this thing was much smarter than any caveman. It was aware of what it was doing. It propped my dad on the edge of my bed and made him face me. It then sat my mom down in a chair and positioned her to me as well. It then started rubbing its claws on the wall, staining them with blood, and then drew circles with the devil's pentagram in it. This thing had made what it would probably call a masterpiece. To finish it off, it scribbled a message onto the wall that I could not read in darkness. It then positioned itself under my bed, waiting to strike. The scariest thing is that now my eyes have adjusted to the darkness and I can read the message in the wall. I don't want to look at it, but it's terrifying to think about. But I feel that I need to see it before I'm killed. I peek at the creature's masterpiece that reads, I know you're awake.
Oh man, I was on the edge of my seat throughout the entire story.
I know, I got goosebumps by the last line. It was a great story, Shreya. And while we settle down, here's another break for everyone. Stay tuned to Radio Amity 107.8 FM. We'll be right back.
Hello, world, and welcome to The Horror Show, only on Radio Amity 107.8 FM, where it's time for our last story of the show. So here we go.
The title of our last story is And Then She Whispered by Mrigank Sinha.
Long ago, in a home on the outskirts of London, in the county of Essex, there lived a family of three. In the two-story home, things were not always happy. Though the mother and the father never had any outbursts in front of their beloved daughter Amy, neighbors often heard the couple fighting. Their shouts and yells were so frequent that Amy had grown used to it, and she considered it normal. But things were about to take a bizarre turn in their small world, and then it was this one evening when it all happened. After returning home from a play session that day, Amy heard her parents in their room arguing. She ignored it and proceeded to the stairs to her room. At the top of her stairs, she turned around to see her parents storming out of their room furiously. When they noticed her standing there, they calmed down and her father asked her to go to her room. She did as she was asked and went silently to her room. The father turned back to his wife, anger and hate still burning in his eyes. Everything came boiling up like a volcano. Years of fighting and insults burning his soul finally unleashed. The mother had still no interest in keeping things calm. She kept yelling at him. It was then that he reached over to the wall where his treasured cricket bat was kept. Without a thought, he took the bat and swung as hard as he could. The bat made a loud crack upon impact with his wife's head. She was thrown onto the stairs. Blood began to pool around her. He stood over her, panting, until he realized what he had done. Anxiously, he began to pace. Dropping the bat, he raced to her side and saw that she was dead. His nerves felt an instant elevation of rush. In a panic, he grabbed her feet and dragged her to a nearby closet. It was nearly full, but he stuffed her inside. He found the mop and began to clean up the blood unsuccessfully. He did nothing more than smear the blood everywhere. He heard a creak from the top of the stairs and looked up. There stood Amy, smiling at him. Fear and panic began to eat away at his stomach as he took in the scene covered in blood, with his princess staring down at him. When did she come out of her room? What did she see? The thought that she saw him brutally murdering her mother gave him sudden chills. Suddenly, she began giggling. It made him feel uneasy and worried. He dropped the mop and slowly went up the stairs. She continued to giggle at him. He kneeled down and held her shoulders. What are you laughing at, Amy? He asked. Her expression changed just then. It changed to the same expression she got every time her mother made faces at her. She reached up, pointed at something just beyond his shoulders. She leaned in close. And then she whispered, Why is Mom holding you by your neck, Daddy?
Oh wow. I'm not going to go out when it's dark ever again.
I'm going to sleep with the lights open tonight. Anyways, great stories, guys. I hope the listeners enjoyed it as well.
With the hopes of that, I, Ajay Mrigank,
I, RJ Shreya.
And I, RJ Aryaman, are
are
signing
signing
off.
off. You were listening to The Horror Show. Stay tuned for more interesting shows only on Radio Amity 107.8 FM.